Well, I'll add a personal lesson in here um, of myself. When we went to Teradata, which was selling data warehousing solutions, storage software solutions, and we both came back in as sales reps. We had an opportunity. Somebody, you had connected with Ted Sedemar through an NCR connection because Ted used to be there, and you said, "Hey, come join my team." So he moved you from, I believe, from the Bay Area down to Southern California. And then shortly after that, after he had you move, he's like, "Hey, do you know anybody that would be good in the Bay Area?" And you gave him my name. So he brought me in. So again, Ted was another one that saw beyond the fact that we didn't have a technology or software background, but he knew from where we came from interactions or just knowing where we came from about relationship selling and value selling. And he anchored on that. So he was anchoring on that and understanding that if people have the aptitude, they could learn and catch up. But some foundational things you needed were those relationship skills and trust and value building skills. So he hired me in there. And so we both had to step back from where we were, back into sales, but as new sellers, learning something new. So we had to recreate ourselves. We had to spend time immersing ourselves in learning again and always being a student of learning and being humble to ask people, "Can you get me up to speed? What does this mean?" And people were great. They surrounded us at that company. They helped elevate us, and we both had successful careers going forward. But to your point on how do you balance and the challenge in the mind of doing that, I actually, even after teaching people to narrow that focus and do more with less, I became my own victim of counter that, where I had built up and we had a successful business. If you remember, they started the e-business team, and there's 23 of us. New team, go after .com. This was early 2000s. We joined, we had this great team, and 6 months later, .com implosion. It was gone. And then we were left with 23 down to 3 sellers. It was herself, myself, and Jeff Adamick. And the question really went, do you guys want a job? And it's like, well, we kind of uplifted our lives and moved. And so, yeah, kind of hope we would have a job. Great. You got till the end of this year to still hit the goals that you have because they're not changing. Good luck. Go get it. There's got to be stuff out there still. And we did. We each had to figure out our business, map it out, see what was remaining, and go out there. And we each did our own ways. And for myself, I was working between Seattle and the Bay Area. And I was fortunate enough to find some small companies that later became some of the largest in the world in our industry. eBay, PayPal went was separate, T-Mobile, and a couple others. I think I had 5 or 6. And at a point where most people were getting quotas and assigned and trying to achieve 2.5 to maybe 4 million, right? I had built up a business, same as you, where I was doing 14 to 20 million, which sounds great at a multiple. And then we had a common manager, Dale Glover, who came and he's like, "Hey, which accounts do you want?" And my answer was all of them. And this went on for I don't know how many conversations until it got escalated. So as it turns out, he's like, "No, you can have one or the other. You're not going to Seattle anymore, or you're giving up the Bay Area. Which do you want?" And basically, I'm looking at a territory that I put my sweat and tears into and built up and survived to a business that was 4 or 5 times other common businesses there. So at that point in time, that went back and forth. And I realized why they were doing it. It wasn't to optimize me. It was a little bit, this rep has too many eggs in one basket. We need to divide this up and we have to balance it. So for me, I grudgingly said Bay Area and took eBay and PayPal, which ended up being a great call. And then it allowed me to, instead of traveling back and forth and spending a lot of time with both, but to really immerse myself and get so deep into business at eBay and PayPal. And then they joined businesses, which became more interesting of tying their businesses and what you could do together. To then I was doing 35, 50 million. And then when we started working together under that, we were building a plan to get to 100. And before I got the itch and went to a startup, I think our plan was already outlined to be 80, 85 million. So again, even though I preached it to people coming back and doing this, I lived it myself. And that really then fully instantiated with myself what it means to really be immersed and strategically plan and become embedded in a business with a customer, but also have the customer say, you are part of my team. That is where things really change when you're in this business.
Yeah, I think it's it's kind of an important thing. I think at least for me, as as a seller, was to have that moment where you're burning the boats, right? Meaning you're no longer able to sort of retreat back to these other accounts because your territory is now a little bit smaller than it used to be, and so now you're sort of forced to look at it and look at it through different eyes and really realize, like, oh my goodness, like, here's the total potential of this thing. And now I'm going to go really pour my efforts, like you're saying. You didn't have to get on a plane anymore to go to Seattle to grow the business. And at that time, I didn't have to get on a plane to keep flying back and forth to Denver. I could focus on really growing what we had right here in Salt Lake City and turning that into a really big business as well. Not as big as eBay, but it was a good business.